not sure about you, but he has just certainly dumped us with a lot of reality, right? Clearly, the discussion he has just shared with us is very useful around how effective we can be in adopting the technology. I'm going to try to keep us here up to 5, maybe a max push of 5-10 minutes delay, right, into the last panel discussion, and then we'll have some photo-taking sessions with the speakers. It has been a fairly interesting and long afternoon where we look at the potential of AI and robotics in the construction sector. We look at some visionary possibility of what can be done. And of course, with Justin's latest presentation, he kind of shared with us the real economics of why some of the adoption of new technology didn't work, some of the opportunities that exist, and more importantly, what it means to an organization, right? I particularly like that cycle, right, where we have this spring of hope of what new technology can bring to us, the frictional failures that we encounter when we try to run it through, and then we start to push blames why the technology doesn't work, and before you know it, you go back to the drawing board to decide what technology to use next. I hope that doesn't ring too much in many of our operations today. I want to zoom in on the last part of our session today to focus around how do we prepare for that future. So in concluding our session today, I'm going to pick 3 speakers to come out. I'm picking the younger ones because I think if we talk about the future of work in the construction sector, we definitely want to understand from the younger minds what are their key considerations. So let me invite 2 of the speakers who have spoken earlier today back to the stage and introduce a new speaker who will talk about some of the younger thinkings. So first of all, Daryl, please. Secondly, Justin, please. And Edward. Edward? Oh, yes, please. So the panel discussion that I want to drive into is really the impact of technology onto the deployment of AI and robotics in the construction sector, right? Oh, I should have done this, yes. So this was the kind of a theme that I structured out, and we'll try to put this together in the next 20 minutes or so, right? How do we overcome the deployment of AI and robotic technology in the construction sector, and understanding some of the hurdles that we may face. And clearly towards the end of the presentation, right, Justin shared a lot of the issues that organizations will face, not just necessarily in the construction sector, but across all sectors. We've seen some of the discussions around problems and how we solve it, some of the technologies that's available, some of the prototypes that we build, right? So now let's get on to the crux of the matter. I want to zoom in on the 3 questions that's listed out there, right? How will AI and robotics replace human and work? Big question, right? You read a lot in the media around how AI and robotics can be affecting our jobs. What does it translate into? Second question would be how the current workforce can prepare for that change to be expected, right? Of course, we definitely see a reduction in the workforce today. The volume is reduced. But what does that translate into? How can we redefine our future work? Right. So I'm going to zoom into those 3 areas to discuss. May integrate a few of them together. But first, let me kind of ask the 3 of them in terms of their thoughts, right? As you know, Justin has just given you a good discussion on economics of deploying AI and robotic technology in the construction sector. Daryl has shared with you some of the interesting innovations that we're seeing in the local scene, and I've now added Edward Gui from Vietnam, who will share with us some of the thinking in our neighboring countries around what the future work will look like. So to kick off this discussion, I'm going to ask 3 of them each to share with us what they think would be the hurdles that construction companies will face in adopting AI and robotic technology? So I know, Justin, you've given a very good elaborated discussion earlier, but I'd like you to kind of summarize and remind us again, what are the key hurdles you see in adopting AI and robotic technology?
Okay, thanks, Olivia. So, specific to the construction industry, there was a lot of institutional inertia, especially in Singapore, because of the contracting environment that we operate within. We don't operate within a more dynamic environment that allows for variation orders to actually onboard new capabilities as they come on stream, right? So within Singapore specifically, what actually ends up happening is that a lot of new capabilities are spec'd in advance by contracting entities such as BCA, HDB, LTA, and those capabilities are not necessarily reflective of the actual current state of the market. As a result, we actually end up seeing that a lot of these advertised AI or robotic solutions that are spec'd in, especially in the Singapore context, become just a management show hands exercise, a clap hands exercise, as I called it earlier, because that becomes the thing that you just put in there just to go and do contractual conformance, and that actually restricts the ability to actually deploy these solutions in a concrete manner, because there's no budget actually provision to actually truly deliver on this advertised value proposition. So this can lead to a continual cycle of relative underperformance of these advertised AI solutions in terms of how much value they can actually bring to the market. And I think that's probably going to be the biggest hurdle that we face in Singapore in particular.
Thank you. Wow. I kind of I have to align myself with what he just shared, right? Sometimes the advertised benefits that we see in a lot of promotional material and how much it can really be recognized within your organization itself. I would add on by saying that it is very important for organizations who want to adopt AI and robotic technology to understand what are the strategic thrusts that you want to focus on. And not every organization, whether you are one part of the whole value chain in the construction sector or otherwise, will have similar requirements, right? AI, of course, depends on the set of competency you need within an organization and how it can be adopted to augment the human competency. So that's a very good point, Justin. I really like that. Let's now move to Daryl. Now, Daryl is going to introduce lots of very interesting solutions from the local context. But clearly, it is not going to be a smooth and easy road. So, Daryl, what do you think are the hurdles that you and your potential clients will face as you roll out those solutions?
Thanks, Oliver. I think having been in a built environment for several years now, I think I've got to give credit to the ecosystem that the government is trying to build over the years. Credits to the government as well and to the agencies for trying to spur innovation through various means, through grants, through co-innovation programs, incubation programs. I think this has helped us to have a head start. But I think the next hurdle will then be to change that mindset and to bridge that knowledge gap in terms of what we understand as a layman and what we understand from an expert point of view. I think what I've seen in the past few years, especially after COVID, is that there are a lot of solutions out there that are not as complex as it seems, but are being marketed as though it takes years for them to develop it, and people are actually paying huge premiums for those things. If it works, it's fine, but the worst case scenario is that it becomes a white elephant. And once it becomes a white elephant, you then get into this whole situation where you need to do upgrades. And the more upgrades you do, of course, it involves more cost. But really, I think it comes back to the fundamental question, are we investing in the right tools? And also, are we over-investing in solutions that could have been done in a more simplified manner? So at Pylon AI, I've instructed my team, we do not over-engineer things. We keep things simple, we keep things lean, such that when we are actually releasing, whether is it our pilot or our commercial product, it is easy to understand, it is easy to be accepted. Now, once we cross that hurdle, then we talk about cost, right? I think in this sector, there is no secret that cost of adoption is still relatively high. The only time we could reduce that is if we go into the volume game where we could serve large markets. Obviously, a lot of startups today in this sector is not as huge as MNC that you see in the US. We are not a Silicon Valley. Right? So a lot of startups eventually gets into that situation where if I reduce my profit margin, will I be able to survive? Now, I think it is a chicken and egg situation, right? You do that, you sacrifice your R&D efforts, you kind of, get customers, you get in the contracts, but you don't last a long time. But you price it too high, then you don't get customers at all. So how do you then find that sweet spot? So I think that's where government aid will come in. So how I see it is that in the future, government aid shouldn't be a mean for people to take up the technology, but it should be a mean to bridge that gap between a cost that is realistic, sustainable to a startup founder, and a cost that is acceptable by the industry. I think that's my general take.
That's a very good point, right? Where is the intersection between what is realistic and what is really needed within the organization? I like what Daryl have just shared with you, right? You don't want to turn this into a white elephant because you over-invest and all the functionalities may not be used. We also do not subscribe to some of the media hype up on expectations. So where do you fit in to understand realistically the right, what I call perhaps a starter package in adopting AI technology that you can easily wave into your organization with minimum frictional costs and get greater acceptance, and then you add on to build it better. Adoption of AI is not a one-off solution. It is a journey. It's like hiring somebody with competency into your organization, and over time you build the person's competency, add on to him, support him or her so that he can become successful within an organization. And the AI is probably going to be the same, how we can stage the AI up accordingly. So let me now pose a question to Edward Nguyen from Capis Software. And they have been helping quite a bit of construction companies with application development. So maybe, Edward, you can share with us, how do you kind of approach and help companies adopt software applications from perhaps a baseline, a starter package, and then you work with the customer to understand how they want to navigate through and enhance upon the competency in the software so that eventually they arrive at a point where they can fully leverage the technology and become successful. Edward?
Thank you, Oliver. I think Justin and Dara has done some introduction already, so I would like to introduce myself a bit. My name is Edward, and I essentially represent a software and IT company from Vietnam. We actually have experience working with the majority of clients are in the construction industry, and so I would speak from the aspect of software and IT. So for the challenges, for example, from my experience, the biggest challenge for construction industry businesses when it comes to adopting AI, for example, or new technology is about the nature of construction business itself. From my experience, construction is very different from, let's say, retail or manufacturing or other industry. It's a very fragmented industry. It's a project-based business, right? You work on a project for a building project, for example, on a project-based model, and if you implement the AI, for example, the robotic technology, for example, you can only calculate or see the outcomes in that project. So in another project, for example, the site, the destination, or the place would be taken in a totally different place. So we have to calculate the, let's say, the technology or the impact again. So I think that can be another reason why like some construction businesses might be a bit hesitant when it comes to applying new technology, because it might be a bit like difficult for them to measure the the return on investment, because it's not very clear. Software development projects for construction companies are usually really large scale and, let's say, expensive, and it's really difficult for them to measure what they can earn, what they can gain in return. So from our, let's say, experience as a software provider, solution provider, what we can advise for, let's say, construction business here is to be realistic. AI to perceive AI not as something like glamorous or trendy that okay, I see other businesses are having it, so I have to apply it. I think that's not the case here. They should be realistic and to see the problems that they are having, the bottlenecks that they are really having. Let's say, accidents rates are happening more, or it's really difficult for them to monitor, let's say, the safety protocols that the workers are, let's say, conforming to or not. So from the problems, they need to see the problems first, and then they will apply the technology later. And another lesson we can give here is that sometimes they can be a bit rushed when it comes to applying new technology. They want to transform the entire protocol, entire process of their business. But sometimes we believe from our, let's say, experience, from our perspective as an IT provider, we think sometimes it's not that urgent. We should start with something small first, something that is not very disruptive to the entire traditional process, so that the workers, the employers can be familiar and gradually get used to first. So I think those are the biggest two pieces of advice that we